Welcome to WordPress plugins and widgets. In this session, we're going to talk plugins and also a little bit about widgets, but we're mostly going to talk about plugins. Here's a quick overview. We're going to talk about what plugins and widgets are. You're going to get to see a simple plugin coded live, something that very few probably have seen before. We're going to talk about the installation and configuration of several different plugins. We're going to talk about where to find them, of course also where not to find them, and a whole lot more. You ready? Let's get to it.
Okay, this is the main plugin page. You can add new here or add new up above. Click on add new. This is very similar to themes, a little different with the tags. And you can search for plugins. Is this where you wanted me to be? You want me to go
Yeah,
search for one?
I don't know, why don't you just put in, okay, that'll work.
Did you have a different one?
That'll work. Yeah.
I use this one a lot. Under construction is type of plugin is typically when you have a site that you want to turn off for the world, and there's a whole bunch of them here. So you can search, and this is a copy of the WordPress repository, but it's local. If you were to go to WordPress.org and click on plugins, you would get the plugin directory. And if you were to type in under construction, if you could type, you will see a very similar list. So the advantage of doing it within here is you can actually install into your site without downloading it and having to upload it. I will show installing via upload in a minute. So here's a list. There's typically, your version numbers. Not always very helpful. Ratings are kind of helpful, except that you don't know how many people actually voted unless you hover over them. So to me, 88 ratings at 5 is better than 34 ratings. That's my personal thing. But my particular one that I like to use for this one is this one by Jeremy. I've used it for a couple of years. So in here you can go and look and link to the sites, whatever. But you click details, it'll open up a box similar to the preview of installing a theme, and you have these tabs, and these are very similar to the WordPress repository of plugins. You can get a basic description, and it does work with the current version, even though it doesn't say tested. But this is a good warning. You'll see over here, it'll say what versions are required, how compatible it is, when was it last updated. These are some things to look at before you install plugins. And of course, the first thing you do before you install any new plugins is
Back up.
Back up, right. You want to back up because plugins can wreak havoc. You're adding code to your site, just like if you're installing a new theme. So you want to kind of check this and make sure before you install that it is compatible. This says it's not, so there is a way that if you go to the WordPress org plugin page or the person's home plugin page, which I'll just do here real quick, you will see a little bit more information, including down here saying 2 people says it works, 3 people says it's broken, and for different versions and versions that you're of WordPress that are running and stuff. So there isn't wrong place. All of the information isn't directly here, but you should research this and be a little wary if it's really old. This one's kind of old here. Or if it's way off. This is somewhat off. I just happen to know that this particular one does work. But this would be something I would research before installing normally. I happen to know that this one's okay. This explains the installation. You could normally upload it through FTP, but there's a way just to click install and it'll install. There's usually some screenshots, which of course are hard to see in this interface. A little bit about what's been changed. Maybe some words about it, so you want to find out a little bit more about it. So this is a good idea just to research. I happen to know that it works, so I'm going to click install, and it basically downloads from WordPress to the site, unpackets it, installs a plugin, and it's ready to be activated. This is very similar that if you upload it, except it comes directly from WordPress. Do not get plugins from untrusted sources. Do not, if there's a premium plugin, don't take a free copy from a friend or whatever. Don't download it from, shady WordPress plugins.info or something, because they could have code that could be a problem. Somebody asked about WSOs. If you feel comfortable with the person offering it, that's typically, you've got a trail to follow them. It's a lot of the ones are the sites that you've never heard of somebody before. You kind of want to do a little research. If you don't feel comfortable, do it on a development system before you install it. So we've uploaded it. It's not actually installed. I could click activate and it would activate it, but I'm going to go back to the installer right here. So again, this has got things like the most popular, the newest, the recent, updated. But here is a go and install the plugins, and we'll actually see the plugins. These are kind of a grayish, bluish color. None of these are installed. When they're not installed, they'll say activate here, and you'll have this ability to delete plugins. If you activate a plugin, like we had the Hello Dolly before, it turns a little bit lighter, and you lose the ability to delete. Before you can delete one, you have to deactivate it. So we're going to activate under construction. It comes up, it's activated. Now on some of them they'll have like settings here, some of them will mention on this line here, and depending on where they go, they might have their own tab, they might have an item like here under settings. Click on settings, and it basically added some more features to the back end. So this is pretty much setting up a plugin. What more would you like me to do before we get into mine?
I think that's good. Other than, realistically, what you have to realize is that plugins, like Jerry said, they're standalone pieces of code. They're coded in PHP, so like Jerry was just mentioning, in terms of being really cautious in regards to where you get them from, or even if you're getting it from WordPress.org, trying to check and make sure that as best as you can, do your job, that they are compatible with your particular installation. Plugins are awesome, but they add super layers of complexity and potential security risks, etc. Realistically, all of these things for WordPress that we've been talking about, other than the core, the core comes from WordPress. It's controlled by WordPress. It's updated and supported by WordPress, etc. That's really not the issue. The real issue is everything else. The themes, the plugins, the widgets, etc. They're all basically standalone pieces of programming that are being created by developers all around the world of varying experience levels and talent and attention to detail, etc. And every single thing that you add to your site has the ability to then possibly conflict with something else. So sometimes you install a new plugin and it may conflict with another plugin or with a theme or with WordPress, etc. Typically either with another plugin or the theme, and cause all sorts of issues to start happening. So just be aware that while plugins are cool, you don't, like Jerry was talking about earlier about themes, not having 50 of them installed at any one time, unless you're simply on a development domain and you're just messing with it and it doesn't really matter kind of what's going on that particular server. If you have nothing sensitive on that server, then maybe it's not that big of a deal. But same thing goes on with plugins. The more is not the merrier. And another thing to realize is, I kind of mentioned it, but maybe not specifically, since we talked about at the very beginning of this, WordPress being a server-side script coded in PHP. What you have to understand is every time that a PHP process has to run, there's a certain amount of horsepower that happens. Basically, the server, you're taking up server resources, basically. A process has to run on the server in order for the output to be identified, in order for that the output to be then shoved back to the browser such that it can be viewed by the visitor. The more that process happens, of course, the more server resources you're taking up, the more likely it is that your site is going to slow to a crawl. So I guess I should have added another myth, and the myth is that WordPress sites are slow, and that's not necessarily true either. It's really dependent upon the theme that you're running. It's depending upon the use of WordPress, meaning have you optimized your images for the web or not? Are you using massive images that should have never been used to begin with? Are you using 10 of those massive images on the same page? Are you running 72 plugins that are causing literally hundreds or worse, thousands of processes to be done, etc. All of that stuff is really incumbent upon you, the user. So just understand that each time that you go add a plugin, there's all sorts of complexities that get added as part of that process.
Yeah. So somebody asked, what is the optimum number for plugins? there isn't one. You basically use what you need to use and what works well for you. And it depends, the plugin. Hello Dolly, for example, is a plugin that's written rather well, and it only activates when it's in the admin area. So your visitors are not going to see that, the people that are visiting the main customer-facing type part of the site. So, if that's well written, but if it was, Hello Dolly Ultimate that, put a big stuff all over the front page, then that's going to be affecting the users, and that might just be, overkill kind of thing. So it really depends on how it's written, what it's for. For example, like under construction, even though it has settings to turn it off, if you have it off, it's not doing anything other than it does get set up. It does go through the process of seeing, am I on or am I off? And it actually has to go through and do all that, go through that part of the code that does that. In that case, you can install this again. So I would deactivate it. And since you're not using it, click delete. It's going to ask you, hey, it's going to delete these files. You can click and it'll tell you exactly which ones are going to go. Say yes. It's gone. It's no longer needed. I load that one up when I need it. And I don't leave it active or even deactivated on sites when I'm not using it, because it's simple to upload and do it. So it really depends on what the plugin is as such. My personal recommendation is to get really good at doing this right as you start and delete both of these. I personally don't like Akismet. I find it not to work and just slow a bunch of things down. For me, you might think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Hello Dolly, though, has a purpose, contrary to popular belief. It's to show that the plugin process works, that you could activate plugins and deactivate plugins so that you can, the whole process works. That's the whole point of it. Make sure that your admin screen's running. It's a very bare bones test. When I build my master loads to, master zip type things, I remove both of these from those. You just have to, from WordPress, you just delete the directories from the plugin. If I have a client that wants it, I would leave it. But yeah, Hello Dolly can go away, for most people. It's good when you're playing around like we were doing today, when we were, going in and making it not work. It's good to, to make sure things are working, but I wouldn't leave that on a customer's, a client site. So you can click this, delete, hit apply, and they both delete. I'm just going to delete that one right now. And it's going to say you cannot delete a plugin while it's active on the main site. That's right, deactivate it. And then you can either do the bulk if you had more, or just click delete. You want to see the files? Hey, look, it's hello. And this is gone. So that's the other thing to remember. Make backups. Make sure that you can reinstall whatever you're deleting. So it's not your only copy of Backup Buddy or something. So that's that aspect of plugins. And let's see.
Just in terms of coding them, the actual code to creating plugins and or widgets is much more intensive than even that of creating a theme. So that's just something else to be aware of. If looking at the theme instruction was a little bit challenging for you, then it's likely that you're probably not going to want to even go down the path of plugin and or widget creation, because by and large, both the plugins and the widgets, again, they're coded in PHP, but they don't, for the most part, they don't hook into the template tags that WordPress offers. The template tags make basically adding certain pieces of integration into a theme relatively easy once you understand the process. You can just hook into the template tags that are already available to you if you just go check out the codex over at WordPress. Whereas plugins and widgets, they really have to be coded basically from scratch, and it really takes specific PHP programming knowledge in order to pull them off properly.
Okay, so do we want to now show them how to do it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Since we just said don't do it, go ahead and show them.
Yeah, this is not going to be even though it's more intense, what we're going to show you here is actually a lot simpler than what we showed you with themes, but we'll just show it to you so you have an idea what goes on here. First of all, I'm going to change the site back to, I'm going to actually show something here. Let's see. Live URL training. Oh, I can't do it on here, so I got to do it on my other one. Okay, so I showed this a little while ago where when we changed the theme, we got this to change. So now if you just put in something that's wrong, it's not going to give away the word. It just says it's incorrect. And that happens to be coded into the theme when we when we brought the child in, we have this functions, which has a function that's unique to the particular theme to take care of that. The problem is if we now change the theme back to let's go back to, let's just go 2010. Oh, activate. So now we're back to 2010, and that's activated, and it tells us some things have changed and such. When we go back here and do this, it will say the password field is empty, and then it'll tell us it's an invalid username. I mean, it starts giving away way too much information. But we lost that code that was in the child theme because we changed themes. Maybe we want to make a plugin that encompasses that, maybe some other features. So the plugins are pretty straightforward. I need to do this a little differently. I've made the plugin actually externally, but the plugins are similar to themes. They have a basic header that's a little different, but it's the same kind of idea. This is information about like what the plugin name is, where you can find the plugin, description about it, version, name, where I live. And this is the basics for a plugin. So if I upload this plugin, let's see here, and we want core. Installed, activated, we're ready. I can click activate. We're activated. Yeah, no. You now see this information that's right here. You see what it is, got a link to my page, a link to the plugin site, the version number. I can deactivate it, I can edit it. So this is basically a plugin. So that was the bare bones plugin. It happens to do absolutely nothing, but it looks nice and has my name. So what we can do here is, this is PHP code again. Sorry to be jumping so much. So we can take this information, such as this code that was that we saw in the functions file, and we're going to actually put this code into the plugin. What this is going to, it says removes the TMI error from WordPress login. WordPress gives you way too much information. So this is a function, and I'm going to make it a little easier to read as for PHP. It adds this function, which is called explain less login issues. It could be anything. And it's going to return this message. And what it does is it's a filter. It goes into WordPress and says, when you go to run the login errors, I want you to filter that and use this function initially or instead. So while I haven't saved this yet, if we go back over here, I'm sorry, over here, you'll see, this does nothing, and this, same thing. So what happens now is I'm going to save this, and this is now activated. And when we come back over to here, and I do that same thing again, we will get an error because I have extra text somewhere. There. Do you see those two extra lines over there? That one and that one? That was the error that we got. Nice. We're sending out too much information. So yeah, so you have to watch out sometimes in programming. You just pasted too much. It gives me this error because it's saying, hey, you're updating again. So often this, you can just go back and refresh, and it'll often be happy. Now we should be able to do this again. And it didn't save. Login errors. Live.
The beauty of live.
Yeah, wow. So, yeah. Function explains the last login issues, return login errors, return add filter, and so I'm going to say, hey, it says inactive. Oh, yes, it does, right there. Nice. Yeah, it needs to be active. Thank you. Thank you, Marianne. So we're activating it again. Now we go back here. Yeah, things happen. Enter credentials are incorrect. So that's the new change. So we just made that change in a plugin, and now it'll work on any of the themes across the board. It's not theme specific. It's now plugin specific. If we disable the theme like we had it before and go back here, it will come back and say, too much information. So that we've basically made a plugin that takes care of that information, and that's it. That's all there is to that plugin. Okay, but wait, there's more. Maybe you want, there's another security thing in with this. This is the old. Let me update to. Okay. So some people like to, in security we'll get into this, this generator information. This says what version and everything. Some people like to get rid of that. The problem is it's generated by code, and you don't want to go in and have to recode or create child themes to get rid of this from everywhere. There's an easy way to do it within WordPress itself through code. So I'm going to go back to my code, and that's this information. The function says no generator. That's just the name of it that I call it, and it returns nothing. It adds the filter to the generator. Like this one did handle filtering login errors. This one handles the generator. And it says whenever you get the generator going, run this filter, which is no generator, and it returns nothing. So we take that, we copy it over into here, we hit update.
Still says inactive.
Right, it's inactive.
Okay.
I gotta go back and activate it again. And then I activate it, and we hopefully say plugin activated. We refresh the source. Remember right here on the line 17, we see generator. We refresh the source, it's gone. So that's two quick security things that we're going to go over on the security session. But those are like how to implement them in a plugin that you can now take and install on your various sites. It's a plugin that's very specific. It's very lightweight, and it does a particular job. We could add all sorts of things to this. There are other features and security things. You can, let's see here, Markdown, open. Like here's an additional one that we might talk about on the security session. You could add this code in. So if you had a bunch of these little things, instead of having a whole bunch of plugins, you can add them in. But you don't want to get a plugin that's just huge and does everything in the kitchen sink. They should be targeted for a particular use. This particular plugin is targeted to tighten up WordPress for specific things that by default out of the box it doesn't have set. So so we just created a plugin, and and you saw basically what it does and how it does it. It's very very straightforward, and that's it. Now the information about what these do, if you really want to get into this, is in the WordPress Codex. We talk about a lot, codex.wordpress.org. There's all sorts of filters. There's all sorts of things that can interface. You can make a plugin for just about anything. I had some great ideas as we were going through the day, been writing them down for what plugins I want to work on and stuff like that. So you can do, extend this way. Instead of extending through like a child theme that might be on a particular theme, you might do something that's site-wide, and you might do it through a plugin so you can reuse the code that way. So that's how to build a plugin. I hope everyone's not asleep. Wow.
So my question to you is, can you show either on your machine or through FTP the actual file that exists inside of the plugins directory?
No.
No. Okay. So
I don't have the information on this user what the file is, but the file it's basically very similar to a theme. Inside of plugins, and I'll let Kevin show this in just a second. Inside of plugins, there's a directory called MDD Lockdown, which is just what I called it, and then there's a file called mddlockdown.php, and that's all that's in there. That is what WordPress looks for. It goes into all the folders in plugin. It's similar to this, and these ones are 3 different ones just because I was working on stuff. But it looks for one file, and it then says, hey, this is, I need to open this up, and then it uses this information to activate it. So that's all there is. I'll let Kevin actually show it to you, and then if I can talk you through deactivating all your plugins, we can show that real quick, because that's a thing that happens a lot. So any other questions about plugins while I'm got the keys? Looks like not. What software plugin do you recommend for backups?
Backup Buddy.
Backup Buddy. Yes, Backup Buddy by iThemes.
It's actually at pluginbuddy.com.
Is it at pluginbuddy.com?
Yeah, pluginbuddy.com is owned by iThemes, but they have a separate site.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, pluginbuddy.com and Backup Buddy. And Backup Buddy is going to be coming out with version 3 soon, but you get that updated automatically if you buy version 2. And we'll be showing that. We're going to show that during the security one, right?
We'll show it just a little bit during security, and then we'll play with it more during the advanced, because we're actually going to use it to move a site from one server to another.
Okay. Backup Buddy is a paid premium plugin, but to me it was worth every single penny of it because it saved me hours of time. And we're talking about not a crash. We're talking about just a migration of a site. So it was really, really good. Why would code not show when I go into edit in WordPress, but does show when I do view? I'm not quite sure what we're...
My brain isn't wrapped around that either.
Yeah, so I take it it's something else, but okay. So I think we're done with me destroying everything.
Okay.
We will be a version of this plugin will be in the download area when we get or in the membership area when we get the files. So you will get a version of this that you guys can then play with and extend and stuff.
Cool. You want to hand me back the controls?
Oh, do I have to?
No.
Okay. No, I'm just joking. Okay, here you go.
All right. So hopefully we're back to changed live.
That's what I see.
Okay.
Can we show the FTP? Can you FTP into?
I can.
I unfortunately didn't prepare that far ahead. So you see that there's MDD Lockdown. That's what was the zip file that was uploaded, and inside of that you'll just see MDD lockdown, and that's all there is. So that file, if you do a view, is exactly what we saw inside of WordPress. So there's there's the plugin. We could have just dragged it and uploaded it. We could edit it this way. There could be more files in, like Keysmith has a whole bunch of extra files. Some are as simple as this, which is one file. It just depends on what it is. But that's as simple as a base plugin works. I mean, I'm like working on another plugin that's taking hours and hours and hours of time to do. So it can be, simple stuff, or you can go all out with plugins. Like Backup Buddy is a very complex plugin, but it does what it's supposed to do.
Right.
If you go up a level, and you'll see that the hello.php is gone. We deleted that, and it left us. So that's how that works. And if you can go up one more level. Sometimes when you install a plugin, you totally crash the admin area. You can't get into WP admin, the site's down, nothing works. WordPress is just not happy with you.
You typically get something that looks like this.
Yeah. If you're lucky, you'll get an error, but you typically get the white screen of death to some people. And this can happen in different places or the whole site. And the number one problem is typically some plugin, just the technical term, barfed. It just isn't working. So the problem is you can't get into WordPress to disable that rogue plugin, or you don't know which one it is. So there's an easy way to disable all the plugins in WordPress, and that is the plugins directory, rename it to something that's not plugins. And I usually rename it to like plugins X or something really simple because it doesn't need to be complex, and then hit enter. And so it's changed. So now you see, you might need to refresh in some cases, but you see that it's changed. And then if you go into WordPress, when you go to log into WordPress itself, I don't know if I think it'll happen on refresh. And when you go to log in now, it'll basically remove all the plugins. So go to install plugins, and it says they've been deactivated, the plugin doesn't exist. It tells you only one about this being deactivated. The other one was already deactivated. If you know all your plugins are gone, it automatically puts the mode in the WordPress database, all plugins are deactivated. So they're now shut off. Then go back to, then what I would do at this point is, would normally be log out, but we shouldn't have to necessarily log out, but go back to plugins, and change it back, and then hit enter, and now refresh, make sure, and now when we refresh this, it should come back and show the plugins, but they're all deactivated. And that is the easiest way to deactivate all your plugins in a few seconds, and that will save you a lot of time. So I do support all the time, and that's like one of the key things to know. So if you want, and unfortunately, a lot of people in WordPress that that use WordPress don't know how to do that. So hopefully, if you didn't learn anything else, you learned that. So,
ouch! Whoa!
No, I'm just saying.
Not like I haven't been teaching for 6-7 hours now.
No,
just messing with you.
Yeah, so I mean, if you were sitting there and themes weren't your thing, or anything else. I mean, we've taught a whole bunch of stuff. Just that's going to save you at first. Then you can put all the other stuff with all the other stuff. So yeah, under the bus. Yeah, thanks, Dick. So, but that's a key thing. The other thing can happen is if you do the same thing with themes, you can go into themes and rename the theme directory, and it will break the theme, and then it will try to go back to the default. If you ever do that, though, make sure 2010 or 2011 is installed, and it will automatically go back and try to load either one of those two. So that's the other way if you get a rogue theme that takes down your site.
Cool. All right. So
I didn't mean that.
I'm messing with you. So we've got 45 minutes of 8 o'clock, and that's when we were scheduled to go. And so I'm going to go ahead and show the 3 plugins that I was basically just going to highlight. Of course, plugins probably are number 1 or number 2 in regards to the questions we get asked about WordPress. Everybody seems to be enamored with plugins, typically even more than themes. And, you know, we would both admit that they can do some pretty cool stuff. Again, with the understanding that someone asked what the magical number is for plugins, and my mathematical equation for that is the minimum amount that you need to actually pull off the functionality that you require. If the site is doing what you or the client wants, then my opinion is don't add yet another plugin. I'm going to show quickly a WordPress plugin. Happens to be a free WordPress plugin. There are those that are free and paid. I'm going to show a contact form plugin and show you some things that you may or may not have known that you could do with it. And then we'll probably also set up the Google XML Sitemaps plugin, because that's typically one that is used as well. There are literally, I think Jerry already went to the plugins directory over at WordPress. If I jump over there, I think I saw it has grown to
13 million.
I want to say no, like 19,000 in their directory. Yeah, 19,806 plugins are currently available inside of the WordPress.org plugin directory. That's a whole lot. So obviously we get asked about, you know, this, that, and the other thing in regards to, you know, what plugins do we recommend, etc. I honestly use very few plugins. Just a handful. Typically, there are some instances where, you know, some custom site requires some type of different functionality, but typically I look for a theme that has mostly the functionality built into it that I want. I might extend the theme a bit, and then I might add a few plugins, but I am not one that you're going to find, you know, even 10 plugins installed. For me would be excessive. My sites are typically running maybe 3 or 4, maybe 6 if I was really pushing it, but I don't use a whole lot of plugins simply because for a lot of reasons, both the security issues and because the more horsepower you're using through them, the slower the site gets, and that's something that I'm concerned with. So in terms of plugins for WordPress, for me personally, a while back, I spent the money to get the pro or paid version of the all-in-one SEO plugin. So that's what I've been using, but I'm going to show you a different plugin that I'm not master of by any reasons, any way, shape, or form, but I've played around with it enough to know that I like it. I think it's a really good plugin, and probably of the free plugins, it might be the best that I've seen in terms of SEO, and that is the WordPress SEO by Yoast. So the first thing that you do again is to go to plugins and either add new or add new, so we'll do that. This plugin is available from the WordPress plugin directory, which again, Jerry's already mentioned, but we'll say it again. Be very cautious where you get your plugins from. If you're not getting them straight from the WordPress.org directory, make sure that you're really comfortable with the resource that you're getting them from, because all sorts of nefarious code can be added to run when you activate or run the plugin. We're going to go to search plugins here, and I'm simply going to put in WordPress SEO and search. And we're going to see that it's the very first, WordPress SEO by Yoast by Joost de Valk. Probably say Yoast, I think is actually how it's said, which is why it says Yoast there. Anyway, again, like Jerry said, you can check the details to make sure that it's compatible. I haven't actually done this, so let's see. It does say it's already compatible with 3.3.2, so that's a good thing. And I can click install now. I could have done it from the other screen as well. And we'll go ahead and install that particular plugin. And I'll just return to the plugin installer. The next we're going to do is the contact form 7. It's a somewhat simple contact form, but it actually will do a lot of things that most people don't know that it will do, so that's kind of cool. I could have put in 7 to see what comes up, but I wanted to see how it's going to stack up. So there's multiple things. You got to be careful. It says contact form 7, database extension, select box, editor button, etc. These are not the things I want. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the numerical 7 in here to sort this a little quicker. And this, the first response now, is in fact the plugin that we want by Takayuki Miyoshi. I'll install that. And then we'll also install the Google XML sitemaps. And it's the one here by Arne Brockhold. Okay. So back to installed plugins we go. We can see all of the installed. Again, like Jerry pointed out, since they're all gray, you know that they're all deactivated currently. We'll go ahead and start with WordPress SEO. I'll go ahead and activate this one.
Well, you can activate multiple, I believe. Is multiple activate still in there?
I think so.
I wouldn't recommend it, because if one has an error, you're going to probably have a whole bunch of errors. I recommend activating one at a time.
I do too. So WordPress, you know, they keep updating, and some of these pop-up boxes are brand new to me as well. So there's, you know, this new congratulations. Most plugins are not going to pop up some type of a dialog box like this, but you've just installed WordPress SEO by Yoast. You can click Start Tour to get a quick instruction, which is cool. So if this plugin is new to you, following the Start Tour would be a wise idea. I'm going to go ahead and close that. You're also seeing a custom error message. It says that we have a huge SEO issue, and that's currently because we're blocking access to the search engine robots, which should be obvious that that's probably not good for SEO, since the whole goal of SEO is to get the search engine robots to come to your site and index your content. So it's giving you a quick link to go to the privacy settings to set, you know, to change that and set your blog or website visible to everyone, and you can basically click this to make it go away. So I clicked it, but it didn't go away anyway. So maybe temporarily we'll just set it to live. We'll make it happy. Where you find the settings, like Jerry was just pointing out, is independent to the plugin itself. And this is actually one of my gripes about WordPress. So if anybody is listening to me as a WordPress developer, you can pass this along. There should be, in my opinion, a uniform area in which plugin settings go. You know, could be under plugins and then settings or something for an additional dropout page or something, but you never know exactly where the settings for a particular plugin are going to go. Sometimes, go back to install plugins, sometimes you'll find the settings link straight in here. Like for instance, WordPress SEO does have a link straight from here so you can go to the settings page. Sometimes you'll find the settings links over here on the right-hand side. I think Jerry mentioned that. And still other times the settings don't appear in this area at all. Like say for contact form 7, and maybe it does when it's activated. I haven't activated it yet, but sometimes they don't show up here at all, and there's a custom area, and sometimes they'll be at the bottom like this, sometimes they'll be under settings, sometimes under tools, sometimes under plugins. It's just kind of crazy that the plugin developer can kind of shove it wherever they want to, and they don't seem to all be on a uniform page. So it kind of makes it a little bit difficult when you go to look for plugin settings. But anyway, under settings, there's a number of different options. We're going to start with the dashboard. And you can see where it says that you can start your introduction tour here. Of course, you have the ability to donate if you want to help them out with the particular plugin development, etc. And there's all sorts of options inside of this particular plugin. So I'm not going to get through much of this. I'm just going to tell you that I think it's a very good plugin from my playing around with it, and tell you that obviously there's an introduction tour that you can go through that I think is a wise thing to do. I also now see that they have the ability to set up XML sitemaps, so I'm going to just take a look at that. If it's as nice as Google XML sitemaps, maybe you can just use one plugin to do both. That would be kind of nice. You can see some of the general settings. Use meta keywords tag, yes or no. These are frequently not used much anymore in SEO. Most web developers don't even add keywords to their pages, but if you want to use them, you can. You can do other things. Disable the date in snippet, the snippet preview for posts, disable the advanced part of the WordPress SEO mana box, etc. But what you want to do, at least in its bare bones segment, is look at some of this other stuff. So hide the WordPress SEO box on edit pages for the following post types. So you can hide the WordPress SEO box that you're going to see that now shows up inside of the post and page editor, if that's what you want to do. So maybe you don't care about specifically optimizing SEO for your attachment pages, etc., or on your categories and tags. It's all up to you. I'm going to leave everything by default. Technically, from a technical standpoint, there really isn't anything that you have to do on the dashboard page at all. Really, the power comes from inside of the posts and the pages area. So we'll go in pages, all pages, and I'll click on sample page to edit. And you remember from earlier, I was telling you that what options you see may be completely different from the options I see, because they're dependent upon what you've activated in the screen options, and you'll see that we have a new option for WordPress SEO by Yoast. We can activate or deactivate there. So that's a plugin specific option. There's theme specific options, etc. So down here is the new WordPress SEO box feature that wasn't here to begin with until we activated the plugin. And you'll get an idea as far as some of what it does. Now, this isn't always perfectly exact, but it does work most of the time. Typically speaking, they will bring the title tag of your page and use it for the search engine listing. And typically, if there is a meta description for your page, it will actually output that content underneath. So this is basically a simulation, if you will, of what your listing might look like for this page inside of Google. Again, please note that Google isn't, they're not forced. They can make changes and show content any way they want, but typically speaking, this is the way it works. You have the ability to then override things. So for instance, right now it's pulling the title tag information. It says sample page changed live. However, if you wanted this to show something completely other than the title tag, I could put classic cars or whatever I wanted to do, and you'll see that dynamically it updates that individual piece of content. So in other words, instead of using the default meta title for the particular snippet preview, it's going to allow you to override that with the SEO title, and it's showing you dynamically live what that does. It's going to give you some information down here too. Title display in search engines is limited to 70 characters. You have 58 characters left. That may not, always be accurate, and there's nothing to say that you can't create a title that's, this short, and it's nothing to say that you can't create a title that's 80 characters long. Just FYI, as far as most SEO practice is concerned, most SEO people will tell you somewhere around 60 to 70 characters is probably about the maximum that you want to go. So whatever your SEO title happens to be can be input there. Your focus keyword. you can have a focus keyword. You typically will if you're SEOing a page for something. You can type it in as, classic cars. And you can find related keywords to this feature, which is kind of nice. But you can basically put in a classic cars or put in your focus keyword basically for the main keyword phrase that the page should be found for. Same thing with the meta's description. And you see that that content, whatever I input, is being dynamically added to this area to simulate what your individual listing might look like. All pretty cool. It's also giving you information in regards to the length. 150 characters typically is max for the meta description or for the information shown in your listing, and it's giving you a dynamic understanding of how many characters it says you have left of the 156. The page analysis feature is pretty cool. It says you have not specified a focus keyword, so I need to go back. Okay, I have specified a focus keyword. Not sure why I got that, but now that it's done it, you've seen that it's output this information. This is the page analysis. So it's giving you some information in regards to your on-page optimization. It says, is the focus keyword found in the article heading, meaning the actual post title? Well, we know it's not because look at the URL. The URL is sample-page, and this is being pulled from the post title. So the post title right now is sample page, so no, article heading does not include classic cars. Is it used in the page title? Well, the answer is yes, and that's because we input it down here. By default, it was not being used. Is it in part of the page URL? No, it does not include classic cars. Is it part of the content? Well, I just have default dummy content, so no, classic cars isn't involved in the content. And is it involved in the meta description? The answer is no. Unless I type it, and now you see that it's changed from no to yes, which is kind of cool. So just giving you some simple, generic, or pretty well-known on-page SEO little intelligence in regards to the fact that you might consider including your focus keyword or your main keyword phrase in your post title or your page title. You might consider to make sure that it's in your actual meta page title, that it's part of your page URL, that it's found somewhere inside of your content, and that it's also found somewhere inside of your meta description. And if all of these were changed to ones, then we would have something that was much more SEO friendly. And I have not yet played around with the advanced, so I'm not going to mess with it now. But you get an idea. It's just going to help you improve the SEO of each individual page. And that's one thing to note, whether you're using this plugin or all-in-one SEO, it really doesn't matter, although this one does have some nice features that all-in-one does not. What you need to realize is, as far as on-page optimization is concerned, as far as SEO is concerned, it is something that you do page by page by page of your website. You don't SEO a site in its entirety. It's not a global process where you SEO your website and then it's done and you never have to do it again. As you create new content, you're basically trying to rank each new post and or page around a specific set of keyword phrases, and so it makes sense to have this editor at least primarily on your post pages and on your pages if you're trying to bring traffic to them, and I assume that you are if you're interested at all in SEO. So that is the WordPress SEO by Yoast plugin. Again, just a quick little top-level understanding of the plugin and what some of it can do. Yeah.
Just aside, SEO plugins are typically the cause of lots of issues if something is just going wrong with your theme and stuff. It's one of the first things I suggest disabling and seeing if it fixes it, because it's doing lots of modifications. So use one that you find is trusted and is well well-reviewed and stuff like that. And if you see some things not quite working right, you can always just disable it. It's mainly on non-standard post types. So that's my 2 cents about SEO plugins.
Okay. Going back to the plugins page, back to install plugins, Jerry just kind of jogged my memory in regards to something else. He basically showed you how you can globally disable plugins by just renaming the plugins directory to something else temporarily, such that it basically forces WordPress to deactivate all the plugins, which is a really cool tip to know, especially if you find you get locked out of WordPress and can't get back in. That might be your saving grace. But in addition to that, since we're talking about plugins, and Jerry just brought up the fact of plugins having the ability to break things, when you activate plugins, and Jerry mentioned something about the ability to basically bulk upload or activate, basically. You can bulk activate multiple plugins at the same time, and Jerry said that he didn't advise that, and neither did I. But there's a more specific reason, just saying that we don't advocate that, and this is the reason. The reason is plugins, probably more than any other piece of tech on your site, have the ability to cause issues. So it's wise to install a plugin one at a time, and then to potentially configure the plugin, and then to do some testing of your site to make sure that everything is working as intended. Of course, as Jerry and I have annoyed you with all day, it is always wise to back up. Yep, prior to adding and activating plugins. So if you make, if everything's running good on your site with the plugins that you currently have installed and activated, it would be wise to make a full backup of your site prior to adding and activating new plugins. That said, if you install and activate a new plugin and things immediately start going wrong for you, start noticing things are not as they should be, it makes it more easy for you to kind of hunt down the issue if you're doing it one at a time, because it's most likely a conflict between the last plugin and something else. So you can deactivate that last plugin that you activated and see if the issue goes away. If you've activated multiple plugins at the same time, that becomes much more of a challenge, and you frequently will run into a position where you may have to deactivate plugins one at a time, and then test until you basically find the culprit, which can be a laborious, time consuming process. So activating one at a time and testing things to make sure that everything is working properly prior to going on is a good thing. Next, contact form 7. Go ahead and activate this. It's thinking. All right. That one is now active, and you see that we can access the settings straight from here, which is what I really like. I like the fact that I think all plugins, if they have settings available to them at all, should be active right from this particular page. It would make it easier for people like me that are looking for it. So we went to the settings page for contact form 7, and you'll see that right now there's kind of looks like posts or categories, etc. There's a title here, contact form 1. There's some short code, an author, and a date. Kind of looks strange. So what you can do is simply just click on contact form 1, and it'll take you to this particular page. By default, they've created a form named contact form 1, and you can quickly just easily add it to your site and be off and running if the form is exactly the way you want it. But it can also be customized. I'm just going to show just a couple of little variants just to get your mind working, such that you know that this can do a lot more than you might think it can just by looking at it from the outside. So the first thing, it doesn't really look obvious, but you can actually click on this area and change the contact form name. So I'm going to do that. Just going to click on it, become selectable. And we'll give this a name that actually makes sense. So I don't know, contact us form. And maybe this is the contact form you're using on your contact us page. So I'm going to click save. And you see that it's updated the text here. It's also updated the text that was found here. Initially it said contact form 1. And we'll get back to what this brown area is here in just a bit. The form itself is this right here. And basically you're seeing some HTML tags. These are just simply paragraph tags. And then the very last is a little bit of short code that says basically create the submit button with a value of send. So we haven't really talked about shortcode much, but if you see square brackets, and you'll see a number of these on each of these square bracketed pieces of code is basically what's referred to as shortcode. So since I haven't talked about that before, I'll mention that now. So by default, if we add this form to a page, what we're going to have is it's going to say your name, and it's going to be required, and then it's going to assign the input of that field, whatever their name is, to the your name shortcode. If you see this asterisk here, the asterisk after the word text is saying that that particular field is required. So if for some reason you didn't want to require their name, which you probably would, you could get rid of the asterisk, and that would take it away from a required field. Of course, you'd also want to get rid of the text that said required, just to point that out. If you are happy with the form exactly as is, there's not really a whole lot that you need to do, and we'll go and add it to a page, or we'll go add it to a page and show you what it looks like, and then we'll come back and set some other values. Down here under mail, you'll see that it says to, and then it's using the admin email by default to pull right into this area. So any correspondence sent through the contact form would be sent to this particular email address. So if you want to send it to a different email address, you can do that here. And I forget, but I do believe that you can actually add multiples as to. Don't quote me on that. You might want to look into it, but I think you can actually add multiple email addresses separated by a comma, if I remember correctly. The information that is going to be sent basically is going to pull that information that was obtained in the form earlier. So it's going to say from your name, which in that case is going to be whatever name they've entered, and then it's going to say your email. So from your name, your email, with the subject of whatever their subject was, which they've entered here. And of course, you can't output that information if you're not requesting it from the form. And then down here, the message body is basically going to just do the same thing. So it's going to say from their name and their email, with the subject of whatever their subject was, and the message body is going to say whatever their message was. And then it has a little bit of information that says this mail is sent via contact form on changed live with this URL. You can change this content to be anything you want. You can change the message body and all of this information. You're not stuck with that, just so you know. I'm going to save the form, make sure that I did that. There's a save button at the top and bottom. And once that's done, if we want to add this default form to our page exactly as it is, simply just click in this ugly brown area. It's going to select the shortcode and nothing else. Control-C to copy that to your clipboard, and you can go up to Pages, and we can add new. So I'm going to add a new page, and I'm going to name it Contact Us. And this is one area that I think trips a lot of people up. HTML does need to be added with the HTML tab live, but shortcode can be activated with the visual tab. So you can type text. Oops. So I basically just put, please use the contact form below to contact us, and then I can just basically paste the short code that we just got from inside of contact form 7. And I put it on a separate line, so it'll be in a separated by a paragraph tag, and I can just publish the page. Now, as I didn't, I guess we're good anyway. Maybe we reverted something. I don't recall making it add dynamically the menu, but it's there, so that's good. So you see contact us. This is the page title being output. You see the content that I added. Please use the contact form. And then you see the form itself. How the form looks is going to depend upon the styling of your actual theme. So just note that the form may look different if you're using a different theme. It's typically theme dependent. But anyway, you have your name required, your email, subject, and your message, and then a submit button that reads the word send. So, you know, it's simple. It's kind of got a little more space than I'd like. You might want to mess with the CSS styling, but it will help you create a quick contact form message. Yes, sir.
Does it have like a thank you page or something like that after you hit send? Or...
it gives you a success message.
Okay.
So. So you basically just enter your message like you see there and click the send button, and underneath you get a success message that lets you know that your message was successfully sent, and you'll get an error message if you try to basically not put in one of the required fields. But pretty simple, but quick and easy to use. However, it does actually do a lot more than most people think. So we'll go back to
just one question was, where did you actually, can you show again where you got the short code text?
Yes, because we're going right back there. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess I should point that out too. We initially got to the settings page from the plugins, installed plugins, but just like WordPress SEO by Yoast, this does install a unique tab. So you just click on contact and it brings you back here. You'll see you have the ability to create as many forms as you'd like, which is a cool thing. So you're not stuck to just creating one form. You can add new, just like you add a new post, etc. But the shortcode is going to display for you right here in regards to that particular form. So if you needed it again, you can simply just get it straight from there. However, if you click on either the text contact us form or on edit, either way, it'll take you back to the editor for that page. And how I got it initially was by clicking inside of the text, next to this ugly brown area. That's where we got it from. So while that's cool, and while you have the ability to create new forms is also cool, here's some of the other cool things that it can do. Over here, you see a little button that says Generate Tag. And if I click it, I get a bunch of options that I can create different things. I can create new text fields, new email fields, a text area, which is basically a bigger box that's used for like the message. I can create a drop-down menu. I can create checkboxes. I can create radio buttons. I can create an acceptance form. I can even create a quiz. I can add CAPTCHA to a form since they have to enter CAPTCHA information. This does require the installation of a secondary plugin to make this work. So if you click CAPTCHA, you'll get a notice basically that says in order to use it, you need to use the really simple CAPTCHA plugin, and it gives you the link to go get that. So just FYI, if you try to go install that, there's a secondary step. You can actually allow people to upload files to you with a file upload. Big drum roll note, I would never suggest that you include file uploads unless you absolutely have to have them for your site. Adding file uploads, basically the ability for people to upload files to your server, can be dangerous from a number of different ways. only one of which is just, actual security issues. Jerry, do you want to mention the one? Jerry used to have a very popular site. We won't go into that, but he used to have a very popular site that actually got a lot of traffic, and as a result of it getting a lot of traffic, he also got exposure to some individuals that he wished had never found him, and as a result of that, some issues happened. Do you want to just quickly mention
one of these buttons? There's just all sorts of, I mean, yeah, you can upload anything, and when you start uploading stuff, they, it goes into your server, and then you can override the server, and they end up basically just overusing all the resources on the server. I've had a few different things happen, so I'm not sure exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So just think about this. Let's say you have a server that has a finite amount of space. Maybe you only have, whatever it is, 25 gigs of disk space. If someone, I mean, they wouldn't even need any hacking skills. All they need is some time and, a nefarious plan.
Yeah, on one of the sites we allowed the uploads, and they just keep on uploading. There's no, for example, there's no limit on how much can be uploaded in total. So they just eat away at all your storage until it's gone, or all your log space, or all your email space, depending on how you set up. So that's, we'll talk about some of that in security. I wouldn't, unless you absolutely have to. I mean, and even something as innocent as a JPEG or a PDF can actually wreak havoc on your server. There can be malware and stuff embedded in it. There can be code embedded in them that can be remotely executed. Just don't.
Yeah, so basically the end result of that is it might not seem like it from the outside, but file upload is the one feature of this that I would tell you to stay clear of unless you absolutely have to have it. And then you can create a secondary submit button, which really doesn't make any sense. You already have one. But you have the ability to create these things. So before you go create them, my suggestion is you figure out what you need. So let's say you wanted to create or extend your form a bit, and you wanted to create a drop-down menu. So maybe I want to put an area for, tell me what your experience is with WordPress. The first thing I would suggest you do is to copy one of the current selections, space down, give yourself some space. You see how the spacing is done already by them. And then you can update this area, which is called the label. So I'll just label this, I don't know, choose your experience level. And right now, of course, it's asking for a required email. We don't want that. So now that the label has been updated, we can go back to generate tag, and I'll choose a drop-down menu. And you'll see that it gives us some options. So the first thing is, do we want to require this? I'll say, no, we don't want to require it. What's the menu name? So I don't know, we'll name it WordPress. You can add additional ID information and class information if you are familiar with CSS and you want to have the ability to style this particular area of the form uniquely. Those can be good things, but they're typically not going to be used by most. And then you see down here it says the choices, one choice per line, and you can either determine or allow multiple selections or not. And so here's what we're going to do. We're just going to simply just type in beginner, intermediate, or expert. Again, one per line, and you can either leave it to populate the first in the list for the drop-down menu. It'll say beginner, or you can have it insert a blank item as the first option, which can be a good thing because that way you'll see what I mean when I do this. So I'll click insert first item as a blank item, and you'll see now that it's created basically this new bit of shortcode that we use inside of the form. So we simply just copy this information and we basically just transfer it over here, and we replace the existing with that. And you can see it says, and put this code in the mail fields below. So while you don't have to, it would make sense if you want to know the answer to that in your email. Otherwise, how would you know? The messenger body or message body is your message, and maybe we want that with or before. So WordPress level, and then underneath I'm going to put that short code. And once I've done that, I can go ahead and that's interesting. There used to always be a save button at the top and bottom. We basically created a new ARIAR form, but we've added it to the same exact shortcode. So because we've done that, we don't have to go back and update that form at all. We simply can just go back and refresh. And you'll see that we now have the new feature that says choose your experience level. There's a blank item here. If I click the drop down, I can choose between beginner, intermediate, or expert. So there is the ability to extend Contact Form 7 quite a bit, like I said, through the generate tags ability, and you can choose drop-down menus, like I said, check boxes that allow you to choose multiple items, radio buttons that will only allow you to choose one of a group or listing, even quizzes, etc. And I'll let you play with that to your heart's content, but it's a cool little feature. We've pretty much gotten to 8 o'clock, and so I think I'm going to end it here and just mention that basically if you're looking to build a Google XML sitemap, you might look first at the functionality inside of the WordPress SEO by Yoast. I honestly haven't played with this just yet, but the Google XML Sitemaps plugin that we put into plugins is actually a really good plugin. It works very well. It's highly used. I use it quite frequently, but there are some little tricks to it, and probably what we should do is at least just quickly, I'm just going to, you can probably get to it from here, but I'm typically used to looking at it over at WordPress. If we look for plugins and we look at Google XML Sitemaps, I would recommend that you visit this page and look at the installation requirements prior to doing that, because here's some information that you need to know. There's some special things that you have to use or do with this plugin that you don't have to do with a lot of them. And I guess looking at this, I probably should just go over this real quick. So the first step basically is to upload the full directory or folder into the plugins directory. We've already done that through WordPress. The next, it says to use your favorite FTP program to create 2 files in your WordPress directory, basically where the WP config file is. So basically your main directory. It wants you to name those 2 files sitemap.xml and sitemap.xml.gz or gz. It's a zip type file, and make them writable. Basically change the permissions to 666. So we've already done step number 1, which is upload the full directory. Step number 2 is to create these 2 files named specifically, and then also change the permissions. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this information right here from the installation page. I'm going to paste it into a notepad so I can refer to it again offline. And what we'll do is we'll open up our site in FTP through FileZilla. We'll go back to the root. Again, it says that it wants the files to be loaded up where your WP config file is, which is right here. So in the same area, doesn't mean inside of this file, it means in the same root area alongside these. So here's what we're going to basically do. I'm going to just open up Notepad, and all we're doing basically is creating 2 blank files. There's nothing, there won't be anything inside of them. I'm going to click File, Save As, and it's going to find a place to save it. So I'm going to put it just in the main folder, and I'll put it in, I don't know, Google-XML. I'll put them in this folder so I can find them easy. The names are very specific, so again, refer back to the naming conventions. The first one has to be sitemap.xml. So I'm going to change that file name to this, but before I do, I'm going to change the save as type from text documents to all files. This will allow us to use the file extension that you see here, the .xml. Otherwise, it's going to create it as a .txt file, and it's not going to work. So that's the first thing. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the encoding, and this is something you can do if you have a newer version of Notepad, to UTF-8, character set UTF-8. Even though there's no text in here, it's just the safest way to go. I'm going to click Save, and that file has been created. Again, it's just blank. I'm going to close it. I'm going to open Notepad again. We're going to do a File Save As. We're going to change it to all files just like before. We're going to open up the other untitled Notepad, and the next file it wants is named the same thing but with the additional .gz after it. I'm going to copy that, paste it in as the file name. Again, I'm going to choose UTF-8. I'm going to click Save. So we basically just saved 2 blank files as sitemap.xml and sitemap.xml.gz. You'll see that by default, since it says .gz and that's a compressed file format, it's my computer is giving me an icon that makes it look like it's a zip file. So we're simply going to just upload both of these. I'm going to hold Control down and left click such that both of them are activated. I'm going to left click and hold and drag to my server and let go. And we're going to find that both of those files were just uploaded right here. Okay, so again, we'll go back and refer to the instructions again real quick. Step 1 is to upload basically the plugin folder to the plugin directory. We did that from inside of WordPress. Step 2 is to create these 2 files and upload them via FTP. We've done that. The next is to make them writable, it says, via what's called chmod or chmod 666. Basically, this is just stating that we're going to change the file permissions to this particular value. And that's what needs to happen. This is more information. You can find it at the codex and etc. And you don't really need to know that. And then lastly, we're going to activate the plugin back in WordPress. We're going to open up the plugin configuration page, which is under Options XML Sitemap, and we're going to build the sitemap for the first time. And you'll see how that works here in just a second. So the first process is to change the file permissions for these 2 files, not all files, just these 2. By default, you can see under the permissions category, FileZilla is telling me that they're currently 644. So we know that they're not 666. This file is down here, the config file. If they were already 666, we wouldn't even need to do this work. But since they're not, what we're going to do is right-click on the first and choose File Permissions at the bottom. And then I'm simply going to enter the value 3 consecutive 6s. You can see that it updates the checkboxes, but it's easiest just to put in the numerical value and click OK. Once you're done, look back at the value and make sure that it's updated. If it hasn't, then you might have been logged out, etc. Just make sure that the change is taken. Do the same thing for the next file. Right-click, choose File Permissions, change the numerical value, click OK, and then double-check that that was done. Now that that's done, we can go back inside of WordPress, And you can see that we have, actually, I already activated it. I'm going to deactivate and activate. You don't want to activate it actually till you've done the other work. So now that that's done, you have the ability to basically go change the settings. Go to settings, and that'll take you to this page. When you first get here, the very first time you install the plugin, you'll see it says the sitemap wasn't generated yet. The sitemap wasn't built. Click here to build it for the first time. If you encounter any problems, there's some information in regards to how you can use the debug information, a debug function that we showed you earlier in WP-config to get more information about the particular issues. Typically, it works just fine, but again, it's a plugin, right? So you never really know. Again, it's best to back up before messing with any of this stuff. I'm going to click this link to build the sitemap for the first time. And it says basically that the rebuild, the result of the last build process, which was started on this date, and it says that your sitemap was built, your sitemap zipped was last built, etc. And it's going to tell us that Google was successfully notified about our changes, as was Bing, as was Ask. The cool thing about this is as you create new content, it's going to automatically, dynamically update the sitemap for you, and it will automatically notify the search engines as well of your new content. So it's definitely a recommended thing that you do for SEO. If you click on the sitemap link itself, it'll take you to your sitemap, and we'll go take a look at it now. This is actually the data that is being sent to the search engines. You can see the individual URLs that it has found. If you were wondering whether it does both posts and pages, the answer is yes. You can see the Contact Us page, the live post, the sample page, as well as the 3 blog posts. One thing to mention, if you decide that you want to add a link on your site, a live link on your site, then you simply just use this URL. So if you were to copy this URL and go back inside of WordPress, let's see. You could figure out how to work with your particular theme. Typically, you don't want it in your main navigation, although you technically could do that through your custom menus. Not something I would recommend, but it might be something that you want to put down here in your footer area. You might want to put a link to your sitemap. It's entirely up to you. Some themes will already have a footer link section that'll make it easy to do this. For this one, you might actually have to go into the code and add it into the footer.php file, but I'm not going to go that far. You just understand that if you click the link from inside of the actual settings page, or you can right-click and choose copy link location. Either way, that'll copy the actual URL to your sitemap to your clipboard, and then give you the ability to go and add that link back to your site, should that be something that you want to do. So now, that didn't actually take too long. Now that that's done, Jerry, maybe just a few minutes of pressing questions, and then we'll just quickly just talk about what's going to happen on Monday and probably Wednesday.
Okay. Somebody asked somebody mentioned that they had a problem with their sitemap generating plugin that they used was generating lots of load dependency on their server because of how often it was updating. So you kind of have to look at the plugin you're using and with any plugins and see, how often do they update, how much resources they use, because it can vary. This one, yeah, so it just depends on the plugin. Somebody want to know, why would I want the sitemap in the footer?
It's one of those things where you're going to hear one thing from one person, another thing from another. I don't think it really matters if the sitemap's being submitted to the search engine anyway. It's really there for the search engine. It's not really there for human consumption. So if you ask me, I would say typically I would say don't add it, but you will hear some SEO quote unquote related experts say that it's good practice to add a link to the sitemap. So it's kind of really up to you. If it's one of those hit or miss things too. If you go to some big site, and I don't know offhand. Trying to think where would I want to go that's safe that we can even just attempt to look. I don't know. Let's go to WordPress just for fun. Yeah. So just by looking, just from the visual version, it doesn't look like even WordPress.org has a live link to their sitemap. So if that tells you anything, I don't think it's all that important, but some people have learned that it's good practice to do so, and I get asked that a bunch, so I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, there's some standards on where you put it, and there's links in the HTML to guide. So to my knowledge, Google doesn't look for that footer link. But there are some people that just love reading them. Are there some plugins that we should always use besides Backup Buddy?
I don't think so.
It really depends on the site and the purpose and things like that. Even Backup Buddy, it depends on what the site's purpose. You might just install it, back the site up, and then, nothing's updating. You might not, need to even leave that installed. I personally use under construction a lot when I'm building sites, so I can turn them off and tell the search engine that the site is under construction, but don't spider the site and tell everybody it's under construction. It puts a special header up to tell the search engine spiders. But I don't even have a set that I use for everybody. What's the difference between an XML sitemap and a sitemap generated by my theme?
Well, if the theme is, it really depends. The .xml, which stands for Extensible Markup Language, format is the format that's basically the one that's required by most of the search engines in order to submit the sitemap to them. So if it's not building it as an XML file, then it's probably likely that particular sitemap can't be submitted to the search engines. That may not always be true, but if it's not building an XML sitemap, then I guess realistically all it's doing is basically just creating a big links page, just creating a single solitary links page that basically just links to all of your content. And that's not a bad thing. It can definitely be still helpful for the search engines if they have the ability to spider that site and follow all of the links from that page. It might be something that they would appreciate anyway, but it just kind of kills some of the functionality or some of the benefit of having a sitemap in a format that's capable of being submitted to the search engines.
Okay. Do you set robots to no follow when you're developing a site? So
me, yes.
I would do that. I mean, some robots don't follow it, but yeah, I would set that to no follow. The thing that I was talking about is actually it does a header change. If you read about under construction, it sends out a different header, so that it's more automatic even. So they don't spider your under construction page.